Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Aaron2for20, and I'm bringing you guys my MPL Week 3 game versus Nick. Now, a little disclaimer, this was done in Showdown because we had disconnected, and it got pretty much to the end. We sort of knew the end game at this point, and it was definitely too much to the point where we didn't feel like recreating over Wi-Fi, and we sort of got lucky when we recreated over Showdown due to certain things happening that I will get into in the game. So, of course, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, etc., etc., and without further ado, let's get right into the game. So, first off, as you can see, or maybe not see, Nick's team, he has a Lando Eye, he has an Infernape, Alolan Muck, Vaporeon, Skarmory, Seismitoad, Celebi, Meloetta, he didn't have Mega Dancy, he had Electivire, and some other Mega I'm forgetting off the top of my head, and Dragonair. I know the Mega, I'm fairly certain it came to the game, if not, it didn't really matter. Didn't change anything, to be honest. But anyway, that sort of will probably explain some of my sets as we go in. For example, our first set is Suicune. I brought a sub-toxic Suicune because he really has awful ways of breaking Suicune, his best being Celebi and Grass Knot Infernape. So, oh, and also Electivire, but it seemed pretty confidently that he didn't want Electivire because he originally intended to drop it for week 3 and then realized he couldn't drop it until week 4 because he was picking up the Mega Dancy got dropped from my drops. So, he really didn't seem like he had any intended use for Electivire, so I felt fairly confident in that. So it really just seemed like he only had Celebi and Infernape to actually break this mon, and Infernape being Grass Knot Infernape, which I knew had to come. There was no other way around it, because unless he brought Thunder Punch Infernape, which if he didn't have Grass Knot, then Mudsdale hard countered it, if he was physical offensive versus special offensive. So the special ape had to come. So his only ways around it were Infernape and Celebi. So a sub-toxic Calm Mind Surf Suicune beats pretty much everything on his team, because if I start Calm Minding up behind my sub, and I sub while he switches out, then I can get some speed F boost, take on hits from Celebi and Infernape better, as they're both going to be special. I get Toxic Salt with Celebi, as Surf obviously will not do a ton of damage to it, and I pretty much just sit on his team. There are definitely ways around this, it could definitely get worn down, but I feel like overall this set is going to be pretty consistent in this game. Next up, I brought Fabio with, of course, Mold Breaker as its post-mega ability. I have Volt Switch, Thunder, Signal Beam, and Dragon Pulse. The investment is so when Thunder killed, I forget what it was on his team. I think it was Vaporeon. I'm pretty sure it was to Oko Vaporeon, either after Rocks or before Rocks. I forget which, to be honest. But I remember it was for Vaporeon. Also, things like Signal Beam are meant to hit Celebi, as Celebi would wall Thunder and Volt Switch for sure, and Dragon Pulse definitely wouldn't do too much if he's a really bulky Celebi. So Signal Beam is just meant for Celebi, as I didn't really need a 4th move this week. I felt like, against at least what I was anticipating, because even if he did bring Electivire, which I didn't anticipate him bringing, 1, I have plenty of counters, and 2, Dragon Pulse still hits that fairly well. So I figured in terms of either HP Ground or Signal Beam for Celebi, Celebi was the much better mod to counter for, because I felt like I handled that much worse than I did Electivire already. Next up, I brought Spoopy Boy. Now, if you pay attention to my draft analysis, I know I mentioned the speed creeping thing. I brought a Gourgeist normal, I believe, actually. I'm fairly certain it's a Gourgeist normal, with C-Bomb, Destiny Bomb, Will-O-Wisp, and Shadow Sneak. I brought D-Bomb just because I figured why not. Will-O-Wisp, again, because why not, helps a little bit with things such as maybe a physical Lando Eye if he somehow brings it. I am anticipating special as it's greater on, let's say, Mudsdale, for example. But special, physical could come for things, depending on if he's predicting Assault Vests and all that. Overall, though, Will-O-Wisp is just meant to hit things such as what won the Electivire. As I said, I had other ways around it. Also, things like the Muck, for example. It's great to whittle down the Skarmory, as otherwise I don't really have any ways to whittle down Skarmory besides Leech Seed, which you can always switch out and then get rid of those. Shadow Sneak is just meant to hit things. I sort of choke, in a sense, by not clicking it in this game, and I'll go into that when it gets to that. Didn't really change much that I'm aware of, as I would have still had the same outcome, but we'll get into that when it comes. Anyway, the speed is to speed creep Seismitoad, what I figured he would run in Seismitoad. That's why I ran this form of Gourgeist, because I figured that I might as well speed creep Seismitoad so it doesn't get off, let's say, Toxic on me, and I can just Oko it. If he brings Sundaberry, then that's fine. I'm going to chew whatever hit he goes for, whether it's Ice Beam. I'm fairly certain it gets Ice Beam. If it doesn't, then if he just goes for Toxic, that's fine too. I'll only take 6% instead of taking more damage from Toxic plus another hit by being slower than it. And this was the Gourgeist spread that sped crept it while still maintaining the most bulk overall in the special defense side. So that's why I went with this form of Gourgeist specifically. Obviously other forms of Gourgeist had more HP, but they ended up being less bulky overall because I would need to run a lot more investment in my speed to speed creep him. Next up, I have Mudsdale with an Assault Vest. This is mainly actually as a deterrent to Celebi. It's meant to be a lure for it. If I can keep this thing healthy enough, it can even take hits from a Spec Celebi or a Nasty Paw Celebi if he has like leftovers on his Nasty Paw set. I have Earthquake, Endeavor, Close Combat, Payback. Payback should kill an offensive Celebi after he damages me with Celebi. I also have Endeavor to potentially get something really low if he's trying to hit me off. I have Earthquake, obviously, because it hits his team almost perfectly. Obviously, things like Skarm are going to get hit by that. And really, Skarm's the only thing that's going to take hits from this set, but Close Combat still does a fair amount of damage to that. Also, Close Combat just helps versus team neutrally against a decent amount of the spawns. Next up, I have Mandibuzz. It's just a Fizz Def set in case if he brings Physical Infernape. I have Roost, Toxic, Knockoff, U-Turn. It was really just meant to take hits from things such as Infernape. He doesn't really have much physical offense as team. It's also potentially to take hits from Meloetta, as I can take hits from any special Meloetta perfectly fine, knock off and get rid of its potential item, and maybe Toxic Salt and Roost up on it. Also, I have the Fizz investment in case if he goes with Pirouette form, as Pirouette form would be able to do a fair amount to me with things like Return. Finally, I have Starlord, our Shuckleberry Jirachi. This is meant to speed creep any base 100, such as Celebi that might be running no speed investment. I have the 196 because that is enough to kill, I believe it's to kill Landa with Ice Punch, if I'm not mistaken. That was, I believe, what the investment was for. I have the Shuckleberries that way I can take a hit from Lando in case he's running speed, as he most likely will be, unless if he's just a really slow, non-invested Rock Polish set. But even then, the Shuckleberry will still help me in that department in terms of taking a hit. Stealth Rocks are obviously for Stealth Rocks and Fire Punches, that way then I don't get walled out by Skarm. I didn't really need a Steel move this week, as he couldn't have used Mega Diancie, and I figured out what his other fairy was. I'm not even sure if he had a fairy, to be honest. I'm fairly certain that's why I went with the not running Iron Head this week. But I could be wrong. As I said, I don't really remember what that last mon was, but I'm fairly certain it was a Mega. Anyway, that is our team for this week, and let's get right into the game. Now, as I did mention in this game, it was a recreation, that's why it's on showdown this week. Also, I did remember his Mega, it was a Mega Beedrill, so as I said, he didn't really have anything to hit with Iron Head in terms of this matchup, especially the 6 that he brought, so that was sort of the backup on the Jirachi. So, fair warning, there are a couple of really weird plays in this game. I can't really say anything else other than it was a recreation, and we tried to recreate it as best as possible. We realized we definitely did mess up at a couple turns, so bear with us for that. So, to start off this game, I lead off with my Jirachi as he leads off with his Mega Beedrill. I figured he was going to U-turn here, so I decided I'm going to go for a Fire Punch, because I figured he was going to U-turn into Skarm, maybe Rocky Helmet. However, his switch into Muck was definitely very nice, as he could obviously Pursuit Trap me or knock off. I decided to get up my rocks, because I anticipate him trying to Pursuit Trap me, and he actually did a lot less than I thought, and I figured also I kind of had to switch here, as I'm not really doing much, and he's going to whittle me down with Pursuit anyway. So I U-turned into Mudsdale, as that was definitely the only thing I really had to break Muck extremely efficiently. So I go for the Earthquake, obviously, because I don't lose anything by clicking Earthquake, to be honest, as if he brings in the Skarm, that's fine. I can always switch out to Gourgeist and Will-O-Wisp it, and if he doesn't, then he doesn't, and he takes the Earthquake, or goes into Lando and doesn't take the Earthquake, I guess. So he Toxics me here, as I then went for the Will-O-Wisp, predicting that he would switch into Muck to try and Pursuit Trap me. So that went really well. If he stayed in with Skarm, I get more chip on that anyway, that's fine. There wasn't really anything else he could have possibly wanted to, as everything else would have taken a decent amount. Finally, here he's Iapapa Berry, which is good to note because it means that he's not Salt Vest, and that means that Mega Ampharos is going to do a lot more later on to it. However, it also means that he's not Shuckleberry, which is very nice to note. I do bring in Mudsdale here, as he actually goes with his Landorus, and I predicted him to actually go Skarmory here, so I go for the Close Combat. So I do a fair amount of damage. I wouldn't have went for Payback there anyway, because it would have done about as much, and Close Combat was just a much more logical play. He does bring up my defense here, obviously, by going for U-turn, which is perfectly fine. I go for the Payback, thinking that he would hit me. Sadly, Payback didn't end up giving me double damage like I thought it would from him U-turning, but even then I didn't anticipate him to U-turn anyway. I thought he was just going to go for Grass Knot or something. So I go for another Close Combat here, as it's really my only play, to be honest. He does go for a Stealth Rock here, as I go for a Payback, thinking that he would have Grass Knotted. And this was a little bit different. He actually lived on like 1 HP and then sacked this thing later on in the normal game. The point was more so just that it died, so we didn't anticipate it. Well, we didn't really care too much about it necessarily, but just want to point that out there in case if Nick covered it, because I don't know what Nick covered in his game as I'm recording this right before I watch his game, or his side of the game, I should say. But that was definitely something of note in the game. So that changed up a little bit how we recreated the game, but not too much. That was just one of the minor details. Also, we messed up a couple turns anyway, but it ended up rounding itself out. So he does bring in a Skarmory here. I figured that he was just going... Well, we had to recreate this turn because he had to taunt as I go for the payback, as I was supposed to get another payback off as he switched in his Scarm. I didn't have anything worth taunting anyway, as I'm Assault Vest, so it didn't matter that much. He goes with his Mega B here, as I actually went into my Ampharos, because I was predicting him to stay in and potentially get up some spikes or something. So he goes into his Mega B drill, and he U-turns here. I figured that he is actually in perfect range of a Thunder, so I decide that I'm going to go for a Thunder, and try and hit whatever comes in, or just kill off the Mega B. However, I missed my Thunder. That was something that actually also happened in the game, so that wasn't like just something that happened only in this recreation. If it did, we probably would have done that, because that would have been a decent damage roll. In fact, it would have put Muck in range of another Thunder, or really a lot of other hits, and it would have killed Muck off a lot sooner in the game. That would have changed a lot how to hit. It's overall fine though. It didn't impact... It didn't impact the outcome a ton, but it definitely still sucked. I still think I probably would have had the same outcome, and I'll get into that why at the end of the game. So, anyway though, I do decide that I'm going to Volt Switch here, as I figured that he would probably try and just Poison Jab or knock off me predicting a Hard Swap. So I Volt Switch here into Mudsdale, and I figured that I can just get off an Earthquake against something later on. If he brings in the Skarmory, it's fine. I can always just close combat. And I decide here, I'm actually going to Hard Swap into Mega Ampharos, because I figured that I can bait his switch, as I wanted to see if he'd go into Skarm or not. He ends up actually going into Skarmory, luckily for me, and I can get off a free Volt Switch here. As he goes for the taunt, he probably predicted me to go for Rest, which is very understandable, as Mega Ampharos literally dies coming in on rocks now. So him going for the taunt would have essentially just shut my Mega Ampharos down completely, as it would have been in rocks range. Even he didn't actually poison me in the game. I was still in rocks range anyway at that point, so this was definitely meant to be a sack and just kill off the Skarm. So I kill off the Skarm at least. That was very good. However, I do lose my Mega Ampharos, which kind of sucks. I do go into my Jirachi here, as he actually brings in his Infernape. I sort of anticipated that maybe he would overpredict and try and set up or something. It didn't really matter to me, as I sort of didn't really have any use for Jirachi at this point in the game, so I just sack and bring in my Mandibuzz after scouting what he was going for. So he brings in his Alolan Muck here. I actually hard swap into Mudsdale. Hindsight, I probably should have U-turned there, as I could have potentially actually killed off this Alolan Muck. I do sack, however, as this was sort of a recreation thing. I needed to allow him to get off the recycle, as we sort of realized here that we forgot that part of the game. So that was a little weird part there. As I said, it was just a really weird turn, but I had to sack Mega Ampharos because 1, Mega Ampharos died anyway, 2, he needs to get off his recycle for his Papa Berry. Now, the last part that we're recreating was just the Toxic off on the Celebi, and MysticUmbreon also taking sub damage, just because we sort of forgot at this point in the game the consequent turns that happened. We just remembered a couple key details. So these next couple turns are a little bit wacky, but it's sort of just recreating what happened. So as you can see here, he does switch in his Celebi as I get off my sub. This is recreating the sub damage that I had on my Suicune. And then next turn, I'm going to go for Toxic to recreate the Toxic damage I had on the Celebi. Luckily, we do hit. So luckily, all the hacks that happened in terms of like missing moves and hitting inaccurate moves, which I guess isn't really hacks, but so all the non 100% accurate things that happened, luckily they also happened, or they didn't matter, like the poison on the Mega Ampharos, for example. I did bring in my Gorgeist here, which the only thing that changed is just knowing his Tanga Berry. That didn't really change anything outcome-wise, though. Point is, though, is that my Gorgeist came in here as he did bring in his Mega Beedrill, and I had Shadow Sneaked it 1v1 as he actually set up a Toxic Spike here. So it's going to poison something like the Mudsdale or the Suicune, which is going to help Nick a lot in terms of the post-game. As my Mandibuzz does not have Defog, sadly, this week. Had it had Defog, that could have been potentially nice. Here, I decide I'm going to go for a Nasty Plot. Not a Nasty Plot. I anticipated him going for a Nasty Plot and maybe trying to late game sweep me. So I go for Destiny Bond. This is where, as I said, I probably should have just clicked Shadow Sneak. I know I mentioned at my team builder that there was a turn that I should have. I probably should have clicked it here, because at this point my team's weak enough to where he doesn't really need to set up a Nasty Plot, and it could have potentially changed damage rolls up a little bit. I'm not too sure how much, but it could have potentially. So here I bring in my Mandibuzz, and I'm sort of just hoping that maybe Nick doesn't have a Z move. He sadly does have the all-out pummeling, and that sort of fucked over my Mandibuzz. It's fine though. I figured that maybe if I can burn his Z move off, if he somehow didn't have Grass Knot, maybe had just the Fight Name Z Focus Blast, maybe I can get my Suicune to beat this thing 1v1. So I'm sort of just playing right now. I'm trying to maybe bring in my Mudsdale, and see if I can kill off that Celebi. Because if I can kill off that Celebi and he does not have Grass Knot on his Infernape, then Suicune could potentially win this game. If I can bank on some focus misses. It's a very long shot at this point in the game, but in my mind, I'm still thinking there is a small chance I can win this. So here, I actually go for a payback, as I anticipate him going for Grass Knot if he had it. If not, I'm going to Focus Blast. Either way, I lived. Sadly here, the payback does not kill, as he obviously stayed in. Had he went Celebi there, though, that could potentially made a huge difference in the game if he didn't have Grass Knot and Infernape. However, regardless, he did have Grass Knot and Infernape that I feared. So I'd essentially lost this game anyway at this point, because between Celebi and Infernape, my Suicune and not Mandibuzz, my Suicune and Mudsdale cannot beat these 1v1. So, very unfortunate, of course. I wouldn't really call it a choke, necessarily. I definitely did call it a choke after this turn, and I immediately regretted it. But looking back on it now, I definitely get why I did it. There wasn't really any other possible way, because no matter what, at this point, I sort of lost the game, and I was really just banking on Nick choking. So call it what you will. I'm calling it a somewhat safe play, but still really stupid. So, of course, my Mudsdale does die here. It didn't really change much in terms of the outcome, I guess, for that mispredict. As I said, it really just would have changed up when the Infernape died, because I do live this Grass Knot, and I am going to then kill off Suicune with Surf. My Suicune still could not have in any way, shape, or form 1v1 the Celebi, which is why I need to bank on Nick mispredicting with the Celebi, because my Suicune would have definitely died to 2 energy balls regardless. As you see here, I go for the Surf. I already ran the calc. I knew that even with Tengaberry, he was still going to at the very least 2-kill my Suicune at the point because of the poison. So I knew at this point I really just need to have banked on him maybe sacking the Celebi to the payback. So that is, of course, a good game to Nick. We are 1-2 with our own team, 0-3 technically, between the 2 games we subbed for Uzi and then this game as well in the MPL this season. We do actually rematch MysticUmbreon, coach of the Anistar Umbreons, so this is going to be with this team instead of Uzi's team, of course, since this is our new team. So that'll be very interesting to see how that goes. I'm hoping that I don't choke against the Haxers this time. I play this game tomorrow, actually on Mother's Day, and that'll go up this coming Friday. It will be up on time this week, I swear, guys. If you guys did enjoy this, though, make sure to leave a like down below. Check out Nick, of course, along with the rest of the NPL, not the NPL, the MPL coaches. Links all in the description below, both current and former coaches as well. So make sure to check them all out. They're all great guys. I am very lucky for them to have me this season. And with that being said, I will see you guys in our next video. Peace out, guys.